you guys mentioned these tariffs, and I have some words about this because I've been doing some studying.
Go. Enlighten us.
So these tariffs they do have some long-term benefits. There are some long-term potential plus sides to these tariffs, if and only if it's played well and played smart, and it does settle to a balance. This is not the first time that we've had a global trade war. It is the first time, though, that we've done so in such an interconnected market.
Yes.
This is the newness, right? The newness is just that the world economy is a thing. And I believe this is part of the Great Reset. Have you ever heard of the Great Reset? I don't know if you've
Oh, yeah.
I have.
So I think this is like step one to the Great Reset. That's the conspiracy thought, right? But the reality thought is this. For the people who are sitting on cash, this is a great opportunity. Who are living off of their retirement, and the retirement is sitting in investment portfolios and stocks. This is a terrible.
Well, so it depends on what you are in your retirement. If you're in the last 5 years of your retirement, this is a terrible time. If you're in the first 5 years of your retirement, the end of your retirement is likely to be absolutely outstanding. The initial ramifications of this, I think, are going to be a 1 to 2 year correction, and then probably the greatest upcycle we've seen in our lifetimes.
There's going to be some people that don't make it.
Yes. Well, this will be
There's going to be a lot of people that don't make it.
Yes.
That's the problem.
Management.
Well, but that was the same thing that was true in 1992, the same thing that was true in the 2000 dot-com crash, the same thing that was true in 2001, September 11th, the same thing that was true in 2007 through 2009, again in 2020 and COVID. We've had Generation X, Generation Y have had no less than 5 once-in-a-lifetime catastrophic economic situations that they've experienced.
Yeah, but a lot of those weren't self-imposed, intentional. It's not the same. Not the same aspect.
Which one of those was not self-imposed?
It was not intentional by no means.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so let me reclaim that. Okay, this is intentional and on a global stage. So basically, we're going to see if this works or not, and if it doesn't, there's going to be a lot of people hurting.
There's a lot of misinformation out there about this stuff.
Sure is.
And there's a lot of Trump hate about these tariffs, saying that and you could take it.
Just to clarify, you're not a Trump supporter, right?
I'm not a Trump supporter, but I'm not a Trump. I'm not a.
He doesn't just blindly hate.
Whenever everybody lost out in natural gas collapse, and when everybody lost out, whenever the dot-com bubble collapsed, everybody lost out. Like, for instance, the housing crisis was 100% self-manufactured. It wasn't intentional. It was ignorance. Whatever. Blah blah blah.
Yeah.
This is way different than all of that stuff, and there is some long-term benefits. Like if you look at the depression of the 30s. At the end of the 30s, going into the 40s, we call that generation the boomers for a reason, because there was a great period of recovery, right? But there was that 5 to 10 year period of depression where people really fucking didn't make it.
It was 15 years. It started in the 20s. And if you look at the economic practices of FDR, who is touted as the greatest recovery agent and the greatest Democrat of all times, the only guy, and the reason we have a term limit, by the way, his policies actually exacerbated the depression and extrapolated the length of the depression. And his successor, Truman, didn't really help either. What brought us out of the Great Depression was actually less the economic policies of the government and more the war economy. Yeah.
I was going to say war. War did. We started manufacturing bullets and
tanks and planes and everything else.
Yeah. Well, we also had a great crash in the 1820s and 30s. This is the cycle.
It is.
Well, that's what I'm talking about. After that crash, war is what started us to come out of that Great Depression.
It is. Which goes on. Go ahead.
It is.
Just the culture that we're in. What have our kids or even young men in their late 20s right now? What have they experienced of hard times?
So a lot of it's perception, right? So they perceive that they're experiencing hard times, but they don't. It's about perspective, right? So what they perceive as hard times may not necessarily be hard times. the complaint about the state of capitalism from the $1,000 iPhones. Is that really hard times? Most people in America,
Exactly.
yeah. Not that there aren't people in America going hungry. That's a thing that happens, unfortunately, and tragically. It's hard to imagine that in the United States that people are hungry. It's it's very sad. And shouldn't be. The amount of money that we waste is more than sufficient. The amount of food that we waste is more than sufficient to feed every mouth in America. But it happens. But most people have not been cold. They have not been hot. They have not been hungry. And they haven't gone to bed afraid that someone will kill them in the night. It's just true. Our perspective, if you look across the epochs of time, we live in the most peaceful and prosperous time in history, which is a little crazy to think about. But we live in the most peaceful and prosperous time in history. And because of that,
Yeah.
our perspective on what a challenge is and what hard times are is very skewed. My grandfather
Yeah.
grew up in the Great Depression, fought in World War II, and he told me about when he was growing up through the Great Depression that he and his family lived in a tar paper shack, a shed, 10 by 10, and the walls were literally tar paper, dirt floors, a little fireplace in the corner, and that's where him and his two brothers and his mom and his dad lived. Because coming out of the Great Depression, they lost everything. If they didn't grow it in their garden, if it wasn't one of the chickens in the yard, they didn't eat it. And that was just in this nation. If you travel abroad, one of the greatest things about traveling abroad is perspective. Even in countries that are adjacent, if you go to Mexico, you'll see. Wife and I went to Puerto Vallarta for our honeymoon, and we go to it's one of those big resort facilities. You go to the resort, and the resort is beautiful. It looks like some big planned community here in the States, almost mall-like in its scope and scale. People walking around handing you glasses of tequila all the time. But as soon as you get outside of the resort and the resort complex, you see acres upon acres of shacks. They're little tin shacks, and these are all over Mexico, and they're all over the world. They're 10 by 10, 10 by 12, 12 by 12, 15 by 15 shacks made of corrugated galvanized metal and open sewers and the whole thing. That's how a lot of the world lives. We take it for, and they're generally happier than we are, which is freaking wild. Stronger communities, stronger families, and generally happier than we are, which is wild. But again, perspective.